Hi everyone, this is Mr Neel Raithatha, also known as the Wax Whisperer. Thank you for joining me in my latest video. In this procedure, the patient has well and truly, hence the title of the video, well and truly lodged and wedged this earwax really deep in the ear, right up against the eardrum. Now, interestingly, the patient felt that their left ear was the worst one out of the two. Now, this is the patient's right ear, and you can see that this wax is really matted. It almost looks like a bird's nest, and it's lodged really deep in the ear up against the eardrum, and the patient performed the cardinal sin of using a Q-tip, what is known as a cotton bud in the UK, and pushed this wax really deep in the ear. And the reason why this wax is lodged is because, you'll have a better perspective once I remove this plug, is about half a centimetre away from people's eardrums, you have a natural narrowing of the ear canal, and then the ear canal then widens back out, it protrudes back outwards, and that narrowing is called an isthmus. And an isthmus in the ear canal, it can vary from individual to individual. Some people can have a slight narrowing, some people can have a really pronounced narrowing. And when the ear canal narrows and protrudes back out, it creates almost like a cave, a pocket, which is larger than the narrowing, and that's the key bit. Now, if you're using cotton buds or Q-tips and you're pushing this wax through the narrowing into the widened part of the ear canal, and that wax builds up further, it's like removing or putting a square peg through a round hole. It's really, really difficult, and because when you're working that closely to the eardrum as well, whenever you make contact with that block of wax, and this patient's wax was really, really hard, and that's why I put some olive oil drops in there just to soften it a bit. You're pushing inadvertently the wax against the eardrum, which becomes a bit uncomfortable for the patient. We're already working on the sensitive part of the ear, so the inner 2/3 of the ear canal is very, very sensitive. It's a very thin layer of skin, less than 0.1 millimeters in thickness, directly on bone. Now, at this present time, I cannot use any other instrument. I'm not able to use an ear hook, because to use an ear hook, I have to get in and behind this wax. Similarly with the Jobson horn, I'm directly in contact with not only with the bony part of the ear canal, but also the eardrum. It's going to be excruciatingly painful for the patient. Also, currently at least, there's nothing for me to grasp onto, so I can't even use forceps. The surface of this matted wax plug, it's very flat, so in order to use forceps you need something to grip onto. However, you can see here I am working away with the suction, and I managed to remove a bit of matted wax out. Now, as I said, the patient felt their left ear was the worst one at the two, and that's the ear they put the drops in, and that's why in this case it's a lot drier. So there I am there, went with the forceps, managed to prise a little bit away, but the plug is still there. And again, once more, there's nothing for me to grasp onto, so I'm just going to go around the edge here. I'm hoping if I can peel some of this skin off the top part of the ear canal and the front part, the anterior portion, that it will also dislodge the wax, but it doesn't, unfortunately. It just peels away. The blockage is still there. So yeah, they felt the left ear was the worst one out of the two, but it wasn't because of the wax. And you'll see once I remove the wax in both ears, the patient had a blocked eustachian tube in both ears, which caused a buildup of catarrh in their left ear, and that was confirmed by a pressure test. When you've got catarrh fluid behind the eardrum's immobilised, it doesn't vibrate in response to sound, hence why your hearing's muffled and reduced. And we did a pressure test, we pumped some air into the ear. Essentially, it's not quite that, but just to explain in a simple way, when we pump air in the eardrum vibrates. The more it vibrates, the more it absorbs sound. The less it vibrates, the more it reflects sound away. And by virtue of that concept, we can determine by playing a sound, changing the pressure, how mobile your eardrum is. And in the left side, the eardrum wasn't mobile, there was fluid behind there. In the right, the eustachian tube was blocked. So the eustachian tube is the pressure equalizer in the ear. So it's a narrow tube that connects the middle ear, so the cavity behind the eardrum, to the back of the nose, and it allows air to enter. But it's also a drain pipe. It allows fluid to drain. If the eustachian tube is blocked, the first thing that happens is that there's no pressure behind the ear, there's no air. So it creates a negative pressure, and your eardrum gets sucked in like you're on a plane. And then eventually, if that eustachian tube doesn't unblock itself, fluid that will normally drain out of the ear, it gets built up. So you can see there, I managed to rotate the wax in such a way that I was able to use the forceps, and despite using the forceps trying to prise this wax out, you can see it snapped off. This wax is still lodged. Again, I'm just manipulating the wax just carefully so I can use the forceps again, because it was the surface was once more quite flat. So I just arced it over to the left on view. You can see I've got a position here where I can grasp onto the wax plug, and you can just see how well and truly it is lodged. And I'm slowly bringing it forwards. The patient found a great sense of relief when I removed that. Now, let's see if you can spot this widening. So just going in, just wipe the lens, going to go back in. So just at the eardrums there, you can see at the bottom of the ear canal, and it goes down. There's a trench there. It's really, really, I'm trying to get the camera into the trench, and you probably, hopefully you saw that. Now that eardrum, it looked a bit dull and inflamed. The eardrum was sucked in like on an aeroplane, but there was no fluid buildup at the moment. And this is the left ear, and you can see it's still lodged. It's not as lodged as the patient's right ear. This came out relatively easily in comparison. And just hovered the suction probe over the wax plug. You can see all the hairs there as well. Sometimes you have to hover it, as if you put a bit of pressure, it's going to push the wax against the drum. You can see that eardrum is quite red and inflamed. It's not shiny, there's no light reflex. When we're examining the ear, we're obviously using some illumination, so the LED lights or the fibre optics, and that light illuminates the inside of the ear, and it can reflect off the eardrum, and typically, not always, but if you get, we call that a light reflex, by the way. And if we have a light reflex on the eardrums, if you see an eardrum with a white shiny light on it, normally bottom right of bottom front part of the ear canal, should I say. So in case of the left ear, the front part of the eardrum is obviously to the left, and it's normally probably about 8 o'clock, more of a that orientation. If you get a reflection back, generally means that your eardrum's quite healthy. Sometimes you do, the reason why I pause there, because sometimes you do get light reflex in different parts, and that doesn't necessarily mean that the eardrum is healthy. There's other abnormalities occurring. But yeah, if you see a light reflex, more often than not, the